The dream of this lonely elderly man is to illuminate half of the life in the universe. In order to fulfill this dream, he is consumed by immense power. One day, dragging his disabled body, he lives alone, cooking at home. Surprisingly, his daughter leads a group of strong men to forcefully break into the house. Fists and feet collide, and even controlled weapons join the fray, all to extract the secret about the gem from the old man's mouth. Witnessing the old man's unwavering determination, a heartless and ruthless strong man actually severs the old man's arm with an axe. It turns out that the gem they seek on this journey is embedded in the glove on the old man's hand. In a fit of rage, the desperate strong man then decapitates the old man and departs triumphantly. Is it the distortion of human nature or the loss of morality? Stay tuned for this episode of Rabbit Talks Movies. Today, we are discussing the globally explosive and adrenaline-pumping Avengers: Endgame. We need to go back to May 11, 2018, when the heart-wrenching masterpiece Avengers: Infinity War was released, leaving half of the universe's fans in tears and laughter. Half of the population in the universe turned to dust, and on Titan, Tony and Nebula became the last survivors, forming an unexpected alliance. Once one of the richest men on Earth, Tony now finds himself reduced to wearing the same clothes for weeks, finding joy in playing cards with Nebula. Intentionally letting Nebula win to amuse her, Tony activates his damaged helmet, casting a final glance for his beloved Pepper. Unbeknownst to Tony, they have been adrift in the vastness of space for 22 days, running out of oxygen, food, and water. As Tony faces his impending demise, he asks Pepper to transfer all his assets to someone named Rabbit Lay. However, he is unsure whether Pepper is still alive. During this time, Nebula and Tony become each other's only support. They attempt to repair the ship, extending their lives for another 48 hours, but with no resources left, going home becomes Tony's greatest dream. Slowly dehydrating, Tony falls into a gradual slumber. Nebula helps him onto a seat, gently patting his shoulder. The hero's journey reaches its conclusion, and Nebula wants him to leave with dignity. The vastness of the starry sky seems to lose its vitality, and the once heroic figures, after the war, appear to be fading without the glory of having successfully thwarted Thanos' plan. Suddenly, a golden light streaks across Tony's emaciated face, and his bloodshot eyes seem to see a glimmer of hope. The woman has arrived, adorned in golden armor, as if an angel from the silent cosmos has descended to Earth. The scene shifts to the quiet Avengers base. Steve shaves off his beard, and a warm towel gently wipes his face. This refined man stands with a well-defined American posterior, wearing a flawless replica of the security guard's white tank top. As he gazes at his handsome reflection in the mirror, a satisfied smile appears on his face. Suddenly, there's a loud noise in the sky. The woman, with Tony in tow, returns to Earth. Everyone rushes anxiously to see, and upon seeing Tony, Steve supports him like an unyielding pillar. Peter's death had left Tony in deep grief, but seeing Pepper alive finally lifts the heavy burden from Tony's heart. Nebula only sees Rocket and naturally realizes that her family has been reduced to ashes. There are still countless missing people worldwide. Upon seeing Peter, Tony lowers his head, unable to bear another glance. Carol's best friend on Earth, Nick Fury, also falls victim to the cosmic catastrophe. Half of the universe's lives turn to dust, and Earth's once orderly existence descends into chaos. The mastermind, Thanos, has long vanished, and the only one with a chance to end him, Thor, gradually withdraws into isolation, blaming himself for not beheading Thanos during their battle. The Avengers faced a devastating defeat, and even Tony, who had the longest confrontation with Thanos, couldn't find a solution. It's all Tony's nightmare. Years ago, he wanted to armor the entire Earth. When he needed Steve the most, Steve chose Bucky. Tony removes the arc reactor and places it in Steve's hands in frustration. After venting his anger, Tony collapses on the ground and remains bedridden. Carol, who has been silent for a while, makes her stance clear. She intends to go after the first Thanos. Natasha and Steve try to stop her, but Steve, declaring they are brothers, suggests they should find Thanos together and reclaim the Infinity Stones. Besides, Carol doesn't know Thanos' whereabouts. She believes she can gather information on Thanos' location. At this moment, Nebula steps forward, asserting that she'll handle this matter alone. Years ago, Thanos revealed all his plans to her. After the snap, he went back to his guard and his retirement plan. Simultaneously, the use of the Infinity Stones gathers the energy of the entire universe. Just 2 days ago, a planet experienced such a fluctuation. With half of the teammates missing, Banner senses immense danger on this journey. However, Carol is unfazed because she is Marvel's designated strongest Avenger. Her arrogant and confident attitude immediately ignites Thor's fighting spirit. Seeing everyone ready for action, Steve can't help but burst out with determination. "Let's go get this son of a bitch." The team quickly buys hard seats and grumbles as they rush towards Thanos' old home. After experiencing a space jump, they arrive at the garden. Carol rushes ahead to scout, while Steve, looking at a photo of the late Peggy Carter, makes a silent vow not to grow old alone. At this moment, Carol discovers the planet and realizes Thanos is the only one present. The beautiful day starts with breakfast in the garden. Thanos, with a lazy stride, plucks the ripest fire apples, a harvest from his early morning. Grasping a handful of moderately seasoned salt, he sprinkles it into his porridge. This meticulous and hands-on approach is the habit of a Titan man. Before the food hits the pot, his daughter, accompanied by a group of powerful warriors, bursts in. Thor decisively severs Thanos' left arm, preventing the evil force from making a grand entrance. However, to their astonishment, they find that the Infinity Stones have disappeared. Thanos reveals that 2 days ago, he used the stones to destroy themselves, generating immense energy, all to prevent his efforts from going to waste. He claims that he is inevitable. As the last glimmer of hope shatters, Thor raises his axe, and in an instant, Thanos is decapitated. Nebula witnesses the death of her father. Thor's urgent lesson is clear: behead directly. As Thor silently departs, the image of Jussi Ching's departure comes to mind. This kind of life continued for 5 years, with no vitality left, and garbage scattered everywhere. Steve carefully persuades Clint, who is unwilling to accept reality, unaware that his fate has long been under someone else's control. Likewise, sitting among the crowd, Wuku bears a striking resemblance to Thanos' father. The scene shifts to Scott, who, due to entering the quantum realm for 2 seconds, lost his entire family. Consequently, for these 5 years, Scott has been stuck in the quantum realm without realizing it. A rat accidentally steps on the switch, allowing Scott to escape. However, upon emerging, he discovers that the world has changed drastically in just a few hours. Scott, checking the memorial, searches for his daughter's name and is shocked to learn that he is presumed dead. Rushing home and finding his daughter safe, Scott is relieved, thinking that at least it was his wife who died, considering himself fortunate. Learning the truth from his daughter, Scott decides to find the Avengers. In these 5 years, the Avengers have continued to protect Earth and the universe. Natasha has never given up hope for a turnaround, even if the chances are slim. However, they have made no substantial progress. In the vast universe, with countless planets in need of help, the director arranges for Carol to leave for a few months to assist others. As everyone hangs up, only Rhodey remains online. He discovers a vigilante who has been violently combating crime, and all the methods are fatal. Rhodey realizes this person is Barton. After Natasha asks for help in finding his address, she hangs up, shedding tears alone. 5 years ago, due to the events of Civil War, Barton's family fell victim to a mouse's sinister plan. In a moment, they happily enjoyed a meal together, only to be turned to dust the next second. Witnessing his closest friend become a killer, Natasha can no longer contain her emotions. Understanding Natasha's pain, empathetic big brother Steve comes to comfort her. Like Natasha, Steve is also searching for an opportunity to turn the tide. This big family is more important than life for Natasha. It is because of this family that Natasha has transformed from a Russian assassin into an Avenger of the old world. Therefore, she is determined to repay everyone, even if it means sacrificing herself. Scott arrives at the Avengers base overnight, and seeing the supposedly missing Scott in the surveillance footage, they realize that things may take a turn. Scott says, "During this time, I've been trapped in the quantum realm. It's been 5 years for you, but only 5 hours for me. In these 5 hours, I made a significant discovery. The quantum realm has different rules. If we exploit them, it can serve as a time machine to reverse the situation. But I can't do it alone." Steve thinks of someone. In a lakeside mansion, Tony lives the life he should have had, with Pepper and their daughter Morgan, named according to his past dream. Some say, "You and your dad are really cut from the same cloth." Morgan loves playing with Tony's armor from a young age. This is the suit Tony tailored for Pepper, just in case. He always disliked Tony wearing the armor, so Pepper never wore it. The arrival of Steve's team disrupts Tony's peaceful life. Upon hearing Scott's theory, Tony immediately dismisses it. According to Tony, Scott's escape was just luck, a 14,605,000 to 1 chance. Moreover, time travel, in Tony's realistic perspective, is impossible. Regardless, Tony refuses to join, as he now has a family, and his daughter is his last chance. Since Tony refuses, Steve turns to Banner. In these 5 years, Banner has merged with the Hulk, breaking the traditional view of brawn over brain. Banner no longer easily gets angry. Even when Scott talks incessantly, Banner just smiles and lets it pass. Nevertheless, Banner agrees to join them. Late at night, Tony proficiently washes dishes and wipes the plant shelf, observing a photo of himself and Peter. Upon closer reflection, he realizes the mess with Disney and Sony. Tony's adopted son, whom he has nurtured for many years, is now with his stepmother. Angry, Tony begins to work on Scott's theory, attempting to practice it on the Mobius strip. Inadvertently, he succeeds. Tony collapses into the chair, never imagining that time travel could actually work. Morgan, Tony's daughter, has been secretly watching her father. Tony tells her a bedtime story, and one day, as Morgan falls asleep, she expresses pure love by saying, "I love you 3,000 times." Tony, happy and wanting to boast to his wife, seizes the opportunity to inform her that he has solved Steve's problem. Unsure if he should go, Tony is torn because he doesn't want to lose everything he has now. Pepper, understanding Tony, silently chooses to support her husband. If Tony doesn't go, he will regret it for a lifetime. On the other side, with Banner's help, Steve conducts the first experiment. Since they don't allow Scott to age while moving through time, the experiment causes Scott to fluctuate between old and young. Rushing to the terminal, Tony, who has solved some problems, arrives. Before Steve and the others cause major trouble, Tony creates a time-space GPS and dusts off his old shield, giving it to Steve. The two reconcile, choosing to move past their grievances. Late at night, Rocket arrives at the Avengers compound. When Scott is interrupted by Rocket, mistaken as an idiot by Nebula, and offered a new breakfast by Banner, they embark on a journey to find Thor. In Norway, Thor fulfills his father Odin's wishes by settling the remaining Asgardians. Valkyrie warns them that Thor has become a recluse. Arriving at Thor's place, the stench of rotten fish and shrimp greets them. In these 5 years, Thor has become a gaming addict, threatening the keyboard warriors over the internet. Banner hopes to recruit Thor for help in reversing Thanos' actions. However, they discover that Thor has developed anxiety due to his past failures, drowning himself in alcohol and avoiding memories. Despite this, Thor will stand up if his brothers need him. Now, only Barton remains. At that moment, Barton is taking on criminals in Japan with ruthless efficiency, avenging his family. Natasha, witnessing everything, tries to console him. The Avengers have assembled, and with Tony's help, they quickly create the Quantum War Axe. However, they face a bigger problem as Dr. Pym disintegrates into dust, leaving only one vial of Pym particles enough for each person to make one round trip and 2 additional experimental jumps. Barton volunteers to be the first guinea pig. Rhodey suggests going back in time to kill baby Thanos, but Banner rejects the idea. He argues that altering the past won't change the present, it will only create a new, unknown parallel universe. Using the Mobius strip, Tony locates specific time points without affecting past events. Barton, using the Pym particles, shrinks down to the quantum realm and arrives in a timeline where his family is still alive. Seeing his vibrant children gives him a renewed sense of hope. The plan is to retrieve the 6 Infinity Stones from different points in time. Thor, sleeping through the meeting, wakes up to a recap. First on the list is Asgard in 2013 to obtain the Ether, Reality Stone. After comforting his friend Thor, Tony continues the meeting. The next target is the Power Stone in 2014 from Star-Lord on Morag. The Soul Stone's location, on Vormir, is unknown, but the team knows they have to be careful. Now, 3 stones remain: time, space, and mind, all in 2012 New York. The plan is to strike simultaneously. During the pre-mission pep talk, Steve delivers a motivational speech, even making Tony crack a smile. The quantum tunnel is ready, and in 1 minute, the team gears up and enters the quantum realm. They split into 3 teams, with the first team landing in the 2012 Battle of New York. The sight of their past selves bewilders everyone, especially Banner, as he looks at the Hulk of that time. In the New York Sanctum, the Ancient One guards Earth. Bruce attempts to retrieve the Time Stone, but the Ancient One refuses. However, Banner explains the plan, and the Ancient One understands. If they return the stones to their exact moment, it won't create new timelines. Though concerned, the Ancient One hands over the Time Stone to Banner, telling him that everyone's fate now relies on him. On the other side, Tony, in his MK-85 suit, and Steve split up. Tony, along with Scott, went to steal the Space Stone from Loki. On site, there was the former S.H.I.E.L.D., or rather, Hydra. They took the Mind Stone from the Scepter. As we know, Loki wore a muzzle simply because he was talkative. Tony sent Scott to sneak into the box containing the Space Stone, while he transformed on the classic spot, recalling the past. Meanwhile, the past Avengers, carrying the Space Stone, took the elevator down. Hulk, being too heavy, had to take the stairs. Tony assisted Steve in locating the position of the full set. Steve infiltrated the Hydra crowd alone, anticipating a classic battle with the old Hydra. Smart Steve, with a single line praising Hydra, successfully tricked them and obtained the full set, even probably laughing at himself. On the other side, Scott entered the body of the past Tony. Pierce, the leader of Hydra, came along with him, wanting to take the Tesseract and Loki. Seeing things going unexpectedly, Tony had Scott cut off the past Tony's reaction team. When the past Tony fell to the ground, Tony seized the opportunity to take the stone. All of this was observed by Loki. Suddenly, Hulk, who had finally made it down the stairs, smashed the door in anger. Tony was thrown, Loki took the stone, and Tony had a brief chat with the past version of himself, realizing that Loki had escaped. On the other side, with great success, Steve was still waiting for good news. Suddenly, he spotted the past Steve, and a battle between the real and fake Captain America was inevitable. The past Steve mistook the present Steve for Loki, and the two engaged in a gymnastic duel. The past Steve's powerful move forced Steve to reveal that Bucky was still alive. Taking advantage of his distraction, the Mind Stone was used, causing the past Steve to fall asleep. Before leaving, Steve couldn't help but praise his own well-shaped buttocks. Steve found Tony and learned everything. All 6 stones were needed. However, their Pym particles were only sufficient for a round trip. Suddenly, Tony remembered a place where they could find both Dr. Pym and the Space Stone. Though not entirely certain, relying on memory, Tony chose to trust himself. The two, ignoring Scott's disagreement, decided to take the risk. Tony ordered Scott to bring back the Mind Stone and travel together to the year 1970. A mysterious white-haired man was driving a car, telling everyone to pursue peace. The two split up, with Tony responsible for the Space Stone and Steve for the Pym particles. Fortunately, the Space Stone was indeed there, and even more fortunate was Tony meeting his father, Howard, a superhero in his 50s, a billionaire, and one of the Avengers giants. Howard, faced with his lost son, was still at a loss. Tony, with a changed name, managed to get through. At the same time, Steve called, distracting the young Dr. Pym, allowing Steve to slip into the lab and stealthily take 4 Pym particles. However, being the precursor to S.H.I.E.L.D., the two intruders had already been spotted. Steve hid in an office, not expecting to find pictures of himself from 100 years ago on the desk. Moreover, the owner of this office was his beloved woman, Peggy. Seeing Peggy not far away, Steve remained silent, while Tony had a pleasant conversation with his father. Today happened to be Tony's birthday, and Howard, a new father, sought advice from Tony. Tony, knowing this might be the last time seeing his father in his true self, casually made up a reason just to hug his beloved father in memory. After completing their tasks, Jarvis drove away with Howard. In 2013, Thor and Rocket were tasked with retrieving the Reality Stone. At this time, Loki was still in prison, living a carefree life. Upon returning home, Thor's anxiety resurfaced. When he saw his mother, he couldn't contain his emotions and broke down in tears. Rocket had to console him with a slap on the face, inadvertently boosting Thor's courage to approach his mother. His changed appearance immediately caught his mother's attention. Seeing her son's eyes and outfit, she realized the hardships he had faced in the future. The tough hero who defeated Thanos was now crying like a child in front of his mother. Rocket decided to proceed alone. Thor shared all his experiences with his mother, who, in turn, advised him that everyone would disappoint others, and a true hero must be true to themselves. Reflecting on the fact that his mother would be killed by spicy chicken shreds today, Thor was about to speak but was silenced by his mother. Rocket arrived with the Reality Stone, bidding farewell to Thor's mother. Before leaving, Thor's mother advised him to lose some weight, to which Thor, unenthusiastically, stretched his hand towards Mjolnir. He still had the qualifications to wield the power of Thor. Thor's team successfully completed the mission. In 2014, the team arrived at the planet Vormir. Rhodey and Nebula were assigned to take the Power Stone, while Natasha and Hawkeye piloted the ship to go to the planet Morag. The two reminisced about the past with laughter, but in 2014, Thanos' army was also searching for the Power Stone. Meanwhile, the old Nebula was still fighting alongside Thanos, and her sister Gamora was stronger than her. The sisters still had a strained relationship. They discovered traces of the Power Stone on Vormir. Thanos, covered in blood from the slaughter, wiped his machete and was about to command Ronan to get the stone when the mechanical memory data of the old and new Nebulas synchronized. Thanos saw the situation on Rhodey's side and came up with a plan. He ordered Ebony Maw to access Nebula's memories, learning about the Avengers' time-traveling quest for the stones and the future Nebula's betrayal. Meanwhile, Star-Lord was dancing awkwardly, and Thor initially thought he was foolish, knocking him out with a punch. With Star-Lord's theft device, they obtained the Power Stone, remembering that they were once complete individuals. As they prepared to return home, Star-Lord's brain was delayed due to Nebula's synchronization. On the other side, Thanos started accessing earlier memories, witnessing the completion of his mission after the snap and seeing his future self being killed. Without batting an eye, Thanos decided to ensure the balance plan he sacrificed for wouldn't be disrupted. After Nebula woke up, she immediately informed Natasha that Thanos knew everything. However, it was too late. Thanos' warship had already pulled her in. Not only was the quantum gauntlet stolen, but even Thanos himself was in danger. The old Nebula didn't want to say much, pretending to be the new Nebula. She decided to go back and help Thanos. Meanwhile, after numerous challenges, Natasha and Hawkeye reached Vormir. Red Skull delivered his usual introduction, making the two feel the threat. Upon learning the cost of obtaining the Soul Stone, sacrificing the most important person, both were entangled in a dilemma. Their bond had transcended that of mere comrades. They had become like family. Either one of them had to sacrifice themselves to get the Soul Stone. They reluctantly acknowledged that someone had to die to save more lives. Nobody wanted to see their loved ones die before their eyes. Eventually, they were forced to fight each other. Hawkeye shot an arrow that sent Natasha flying, and he leaped off the cliff. However, Natasha caught him in midair, tying her last rope around Hawkeye's waist. Watching her family gradually slipping away, Hawkeye broke down, while Natasha had already accepted her fate. The few seconds of falling seemed like centuries for Hawkeye. Accompanying Natasha, lying breathless on the ground, after the thunder and lightning, Hawkeye awakened, holding the Soul Stone. They barely completed the mission. Everyone returned to their original timeline, only to realize that Natasha's promised one last time was their final farewell. While joyous at their success, they found themselves without a proper funeral for Natasha. Even her family had vanished, leaving only the Avengers. No one was willing to accept this reality. However, there were more important matters at hand. To prevent Natasha's sacrifice from being in vain, Tony created the Nano Gauntlet. Placing the stones in sequence, the question arose, who would snap their fingers? Thor seemed the most suitable, but his anxiety and unstable mental state made him a risky candidate. Besides, losing his other half could potentially lead to his demise. With only superhumans or animals left, there was only one person with the strong will needed Banner. Turning Natasha's grief into motivation, Banner, despite the immense power of the Infinity Stones nearly killing Thanos, initiated the snap. The Avengers, including Hulk, witnessed this monumental moment. Tony sealed the entire Avengers base to prevent harm to the outside world. Meanwhile, the old Nebula seized the opportunity to bring Thanos' warship to the ruins. As they waited, the sun cast its light into the building. Banner held the ruins, buying time for Rhodes and Rocket to escape. Unfortunately, it was too late. The Avengers living by the beach were quickly engulfed. In his shrunken form, Scott became the last hope for Banner, Rhodes, and Rocket's survival. On the other side, Barton struggled to stand and discovered the Nano Gauntlet nearby. Just a short distance away, accompanied by countless aerial bombs, Thanos teleported onto the ruins. Satisfied with everything the old Nebula had done, he watched as the old Nebula tried to justify her actions. Thanos' countless vanguard forces followed. Thanos was pleased with the old Nebula's efforts and looked forward to the arrival of the Infinity Stones. Witnessing the events, Gamora decided to betray Thanos. On the other side, Barton grabbed the gauntlet, ran for his life, and took down all the adversaries behind him. Midway, he reached a safe spot, where he immediately handed over the gauntlet. To his surprise, it was the old Nebula. In the critical moment, Gamora and the current Nebula arrived. The sisters tried to convince the old Nebula to join them, but witnessing no success, the old Nebula staged her own death. In the chaos, Tony, who was protected by his armor, regained consciousness. In the wreckage, he found his friend Steve and handed over the shield to him. Thor, who had been waiting, silently observed as Thanos played with the Infinity Stones, creating a new version of his double-edged sword. Thor asked for opinions, and they unanimously decided to do whatever it took to defeat Thanos. Mjolnir and Stormbreaker flew into Thor's hands simultaneously. After 5 years, Thor returned to the battlefield. Facing the three Avengers, Thanos remained unfazed. All the events made him realize that erasing half of life wasn't enough. He wanted to turn the entire universe into dust and start anew. The Avengers were not willing to give him that chance. Each member was prepared to sacrifice themselves. The three Avengers confronted Thanos, filling the gap that audiences missed in Avengers: Infinity War. Thor and Tony executed a perfect teamwork reminiscent of The Avengers, 2012. However, they underestimated Thanos' double-edged sword, also crafted by the dwarf Eitri, which proved to be a powerful weapon. Thanos used Tony's body as a shield against Thor's attacks, momentarily causing Tony to lose consciousness. Steve resisted but was eventually knocked down, leaving Thor to confront the foe alone. Thor charged with his axe, only to realize that this version of Thanos from 2014 was younger, stronger, and more vigorous. As the saying goes, a man at 40 is a wolf, at 50 a tiger, and at 60 he can film Avengers 5. 3 punches and 2 kicks later, Thor was battered and bloodied, nearly defeated. At the critical moment when Thanos was about to take revenge and kill Thor with his axe, Mjolnir sensed the worthy one. Thor, battered but not broken, witnessed the hammer smashing Thanos away. Steve, pure of heart and righteous, gained the right to wield Mjolnir, acquiring a powerful buff. Subtly bestowed with this divine weapon, Steve displayed a set of splendid, smooth, and skillful maneuvers. He overwhelmed Thanos, who found himself unable to retaliate. Infuriated, Thanos lifted his massive double-edged sword, intending to deliver lethal blows to Steve. Despite being wounded and his shield broken in half by the dwarf-made sword, Steve summoned the last of his strength, propping himself up. Clenching the broken shield tightly, he bit down on his determination to protect his home. Confronting Thanos' massive army, Steve stood alone, facing the imminent threat of complete annihilation. Instead of retreating, he pressed on, his every step a relentless approach. In this moment, we were all Captain America fans. At this critical juncture, a turning point occurred. Sam's voice came through the radio, and, transformed into dust or not, all the Avengers rushed to the battlefield. As the portals opened one by one, Black Panther led the Wakandan army, accompanied by the armies of Wakanda, Kamar-Taj, Asgard, and the Ravagers. In this all-or-nothing battle, even Pepper Potts in her Iron Man suit arrived to support Tony. Scott, in his giant form, stood alongside the 3 Hulks banner, the Ancient One, and She-Hulk. With thousands of allies behind Steve, he shouted the long-awaited line, "Avengers, assemble." The Avengers assembled and turned the tide of the battle. Each member showcased their unique abilities. Tony entrusted his back to the person he trusted the most, Pepper. In a voluntary act, everyone united under the leadership of Steve Rogers. Tony was knocked down by Black Dwarf, but just in time, Peter arrived and stomped on Black Dwarf, crushing him. Seeing the excited and chattering young boy in front of him after 5 years, Tony couldn't help but hug him. After 5 years, he finally reunited with his godson. Star-Lord, amidst the chaos of the battle, played the fool and was almost single-handedly killed by a minion. Gamora saved him, but before they could catch up, Star-Lord got a blow to the groin. In 2014, Gamora hadn't fallen in love with Star-Lord yet. As Barton fought to buy time, the scene was chaotic. Now, the quantum tunnel was destroyed, and Scott's van became the last hope. Scott, responsible for opening the portal, found himself facing interference from Thanos and his forces. T'Challa called out Barton's name, and the gauntlet began transferring to Scott. However, Thanos intercepted them on the way. In the midst of the struggle, the real assassin descended from the sky. Having lost her love twice a few hours ago, Wanda unleashed the full power of the Scarlet Witch. Even the mighty Thanos was no match for her. Wanda, in a burst of rage, completely disintegrated Thanos' double-edged sword. Just as she was about to dismantle Thanos, he ordered a carpet bombing, using missiles that caused 1,400 casualties to his own army and 800 casualties to the enemy. The chaotic explosions changed the wind direction, and Wanda, who was sent flying, survived. At this moment, Peter took over the gauntlet and continued the relay, initiating a one-shot, one-kill mode that he had never truly used before. Bombardment caused seawater to flood the battlefield. In the face of imminent danger, Legend raised both hands and initiated a water-controlling mode to prevent the battlefield from being submerged. Meanwhile, Peter found himself buried among the beasts in the vanguard. Steve, the tough guy, threw his hammer, giving Peter a chance to catch his breath. While flying, Peter was hit by a missile, but Aunt May intercepted Spider-Man just in time, passing him over to Valkyrie on her Pegasus. With a carpet-style bombardment looming, danger was everywhere. Peter, fearing for his life, cowered, awaiting impending doom. Suddenly, missiles swarmed towards the atmosphere. Enter the woman, the most powerful Avenger, arrived to show Thanos who's boss. She obliterated Thanos' warship, Scott's portal opened, and Carol gently comforted the wounded child. Grabbing the gauntlet, she prepared to lead the Avengers into battle. Kamala seamlessly integrated into the enemy ranks, while Wanda and Valkyrie unleashed a barrage, buying time for Carol. Thanos, pinned by laser fire, realized his predicament. In a desperate move, a small dagger destroyed the last quantum tunnel. A massive explosion overturned Carol. Tony seized the opportunity, and the battle for the gauntlet ensued. Thor and Steve rushed to assist, but facing Thanos, they were no match. Carol arrived just in time to prevent disaster. Thanos donned the gauntlet, ready to snap his fingers. Suddenly, Carol forcefully pried open Thanos' fingers, halting the snap. Unbeknownst to her, Thanos swiftly plucked the Power Stone and delivered a powerful punch, rendering Carol unconscious. Legend finally turned to Tony, extending a hand, signaling it was the only chance. Without hesitation, Tony rushed to seize the gauntlet. The nanotech gauntlet, crafted by himself, allowed him to effortlessly retrieve all the stones. Thanos, previously confident of his destiny, realized that the stones were gone. In that moment, Tony Stark, a mere mortal, bore the power of 6 stones. Uttering the words, "I am Iron Man," the snap unleashed a cataclysmic force sweeping through the universe. Thanos' army disintegrated one by one. Tony had prepared for this moment for 5 years, eliminating his own nightmare. As he watched his minions vanish, Thanos sat on the ground, quietly awaiting his own demise. Tony, struggling, sat near the ruins. Half of his body scorched by the stones, Rhodey could only watch his best friend on the verge of death. Peter rushed over, tearfully telling Tony they had won. Tony, however, had no strength left to respond. Pepper, feigning strength, didn't want Tony to see her heartbreak. Tony slowly grasped Pepper's hand, mouthed his name with a complex expression. Pepper reassured Tony that he could finally rest. A few seconds later, the last light of the reactor extinguished. Pepper, unable to contain her emotions, hugged Tony, and Steve couldn't stop his tears. Tony sacrificed over a decade of his life for peace, trading his life for the universe's true balance. The name Tony Stark would be remembered throughout the universe, and the only regret was that he couldn't see his daughter Morgan grow up. As the hero's curtain fell, Pepper released Tony's original arc reactor into the lake, letting it drift away. The world organized the grandest funeral for Tony, witnessing everyone coming together. On the other side, Tony and Natasha, in a vision, were surely satisfied. Morgan became everyone's treasure. Thor planned to continue his intergalactic journey, leaving Asgard to Valkyrie. Before leaving, he entrusted Asgard to Valkyrie and took a ride on Star-Lord's spaceship. Star-Lord was concerned about Gamera's whereabouts, finally able to claim he was more handsome than Thor. Banner's arm was permanently damaged, and Steve went alone to the quantum realm to return the stones. Bucky and Sam exchanged a silent understanding. However, Steve never returned, leaving only a mysterious, white-haired old man sitting in the distance. Bucky, aware of Steve's decision, asked Sam to go talk to him. Steve, having returned to the past, remembered Tony's words about experiencing an ordinary life. So, he found Peggy, got married, and had a child. Having completed his journey, Steve passed on his legacy to Sam. An era had come to an end. Regardless of whether it brought surprises or laughter, Marvel allowed me to experience what a cinematic universe truly means. It not only changed the lives of the actors but also redefined the pinnacle of film and television. Life itself is a movie, isn't it? People who come together and help each other are like a cinematic universe. I am Tutule. Thank you all for watching this lengthy episode. If there are any shortcomings, I hope for your understanding.